I'm really excited about this video today because I think a lot of adult learners have felt at one time or another frustrated by the childish nature of a lot of beginner cello pieces. So today I want to cover my top 5 classical pieces that you can learn earlier on in your cello journey. I myself started cello at age 25, so I definitely remember the struggle. I remember when I was assigned the pieces on my list, I actually felt like I was becoming a cellist and that they were allowing me to express something. So there's some really well-known pieces on my list, one controversial piece, and some lesser-known pieces that I remember really made an impression on me when I first learned them. Before we go on, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to my channel. Doing so really helps support this channel, and also thank you everyone who has liked, subscribed, and commented so far. It's incredibly motivating to know I'm reaching so many other adult cellists. So let's get started. Number 1, La Cinquantaine by Gabriel Marie. So this is probably the most accessible piece in terms of difficulty on my list, but don't discount it as a simple beginner piece. La Cinquantaine has so much character to sink your teeth into. The message of the music, its mood, it's clear and effective, and for me this translated into more musicianship and helped me further develop my bow arm technique. By focusing on the playful, flirtatious character of the music, you can figure out ways in which you can alter the mood of a musical note via swells, articulations, and phrasing in the bow arm. In other words, it's very clear how the music should go phrasing-wise, and that clarity helps. Instead of simply applying a bowing distribution concept kind of unconnected to the feel of the music itself, the music and what's needed helps guide your bow. It becomes more obvious how long or short each note should be, where the emphasis should be placed, etc. The other challenge with this piece for beginners is its length. I remember when I was first introduced to La Cinquantaine, it was by far the longest piece I'd ever learned, and I also remember sort of pooping out about 2/3 of the way through. So if you've been on a steady diet of shorter etudes so far, this piece will help you begin to develop the stamina you will need more and more as you progress. All right, number 2, Sicilienne by Von Paradis. This is one of those pieces that makes you so glad you decided to start playing the cello. It's full of character, both tender and nostalgic, which I think lends itself to the range and timbre of the cello. And while the music flows seamlessly and the phrasing isn't particularly difficult to figure out, this piece poses 2 major challenges that are essential aspects of developing an advanced level of nuance. First challenge is really paying attention to each note and how they relate musically to one another. I'm talking about things like taking care of both the starts and ends of notes, because in a piece like this, the way each note begins and ends is very exposed. I mean, the piano is just tapping out block chords and staying out of the way. Here, we really have to do a good job of making sure each note echoes the overall mood of the piece, which for me personally means hardly any sharp starts to notes and gentle decays on longer notes to emphasize the 6/8 dance-like rhythm without losing the sense of an overarching melodic line. Second challenge comes in the second half of the piece. It's that large shift up to D flat above our harmonic A on the A string. This will probably be one of the first times you start to anticipate a hard technical moment in a piece. And there's definitely a psychological element here at play of, well, learning not to freak out. Working on this piece will help you learn how to practice tackling that kind of tough technical challenge, and hopefully practice it in a way that eventually you see it as just another part of the terrain. It's good practice for harder repertoire, which will have more and more of these types of moments that seem to loom out at us menacingly from bars away. Number 3, Matz Cello Suite in C major, or what I like to call the Prelude to Bach's Prelude. Of all the pieces on my list, I'm most excited to share this one with you for the simple fact that it's the least well known. This suite of movements, quite clearly inspired by the Bach G major cello suite, belongs in that top echelon of perfect pieces for the adult learner. Why? The music itself sounds truly beautiful, not watered down or simple sounding in the least when weighed against its technical difficulty. For beginners, things like big shifts and constant shifting can be difficult, and this piece doesn't have any of that. It sits beautifully on the fingerboard with lots of scalar ascents and descents, and it doesn't have the kind of string crossings that make the Bach Prelude more difficult on the bow arm side of things. Matz was a professor of cello, a gifted pedagogue, and a composer, and here we see what that combination can produce. Truly fulfilling musical pieces that are designed for cellists a little earlier on in their journeys. So in other words, it's a very flattering piece because the music belies its actual difficulty level. I would recommend this piece highly for those of you who have your eyes set on the Bach G major suite and its famous prelude, but want a more accessible suite to help develop your sound and stamina first. Please give this suite a try. It's wonderful, and any of the movements could function perfectly as a piece to play for friends or family, or as a piece on a recital. I recorded the second movement, the Allemande, and I'll include the link in the description below, so take a listen and tell me what you think. Number 4. Etude 17 from Dotzauer's Exercises for the Violoncello, Books 1 and 2. This is a fantastic gem in the earlier etude literature with a totally gorgeous melody. It doesn't really sound like an etude. If I heard it without knowing what it was, I would assume it had a piano accompaniment and it was a cherished piece of the cello literature. So with this etude, the challenge is creating long, sinuous melodic lines through bow changes and constant shifting. If I had to pick an etude as an ideal warm-up for the Swan by Saint-Saëns, which is on everybody's bucket list, this etude would be it. As in the Swan, you have to really plan your bow use and bow distribution out ahead of time so that you don't end up running out of bow and failing to create the crescendos and melodic contours that Dotzauer so expertly devised. Unlike the Swan, however, which goes as high as D natural above harmonic A on the A string, for this piece you only need to know the lower neck positions up to 4th position and how to hit harmonic D on the D string. As with Matz, Dotzauer was a noted professor and pedagogue and composed a tremendous amount of pieces for the cello, including this gorgeous piece of music that strikes a bullseye in terms of technical pedagogy and musicality. This piece is a case where eating your vegetables is the same as enjoying your dessert. Finally, number 5, the Bach Prelude in G major. All right. So, before I get torched in the comment section, I am fully aware that this is not a beginner piece by any means. To play it beautifully requires a very advanced level of technique and musicianship. However, I first started learning this piece when I had been playing the cello for about 3 months, and I found it enormously rewarding. I gained an incredible amount of motivation knowing that I was actually working on a real, unwatered down masterwork of the cello repertoire. And I think that's truly important for adult learners. I know from my own experience as an adult learner and as a teacher focused on adults, it's as important to fall in love with playing cello as it is to progress as a player. If you love the music you're working on, you are going to want to practice more and invest more of yourself into your cello journey. And that can make all the difference. I will say that aside from being an incredibly beautiful piece, the Prelude can be used as a very effective learning tool. Right from the get-go, the player is faced with constant string crossings as well as the chance to plug in any number of bowing patterns as a means of learning the passage work. You can try numerous different bowing options to develop comfort and skill. For a beginner, every time you change from one bow per note to 2 notes slurred, 4 notes slurred, 8 notes slurred, the music will feel like a totally different passage. The music's flexibility lies in the fact that it's primarily a long string of 16th notes, so it's very easy to create recurring bowing patterns that fit over the notes without issue. Also, the highest note in this piece is the G natural on the A string, which can be played in 4th position. So once you know your lower neck positions, your left hand can feasibly reach all of the notes of the piece. So some people will argue it's better to wait until you're more advanced to start in on solo Bach, But f it, go for it. I did. It was a great experience. I'm glad there's no recordings of myself playing it back then, of course, but I learned a tremendous amount. And nothing terrible happened to me, anyone else. I'm still here playing. Everyone's okay. I hope this list has excited you and inspired you to try these wonderful pieces, and also to realize that even if you have to look a little harder, you can find truly satisfying compositions that will also develop you as a player. There is nothing better than starting to learn a piece that makes you excited for the future, and that's true at any point in your journey. If you do try these pieces, I would love to hear about it in the comments section below, and if you haven't already done so, please consider subscribing to my channel. Thanks so much.